Thanks for joining us for another episode. I am Lindsay, and to my left is Mike, and on the bottom is Keith.
You see why I like being here? Because you're going to my right, because things are backwards for us. But
I don't know.
There
I don't
I
know
am.
my left from right. You have to do that thing they teach you, the L for left. That's over this way. So you're on my, but I'm looking at it. You're on my left.
What if you do it this way, though?
Pew 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 pew. Okay.
Missed you guys.
Yeah, I miss you too.
Yeah, I miss you too.
Yes, we're happy to have Keith back with us today.
You know what's going to happen? The episode without me is going to be like all the views.
All the views. They're like, thank God we got rid of that dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
The loud one is always at the bottom.
That loud one that likes to be a bottom. I mean...
Times are tough.
Oops.
Facts.
Times are tough. It's a pandemic. I don't know.
What
You
you gotta
think this is
do?
free? St. Sam's Choice.
All right. So tonight will be part 2 of our happy little series of the three of us discussing kind of the most influential or memorable paranormal / spiritual experiences that we've had throughout our life. And tonight, Mike will be sharing his experiences with us. So, Michael, take it away.
Wow, just like that.
Take me away, Calgon.
Boom. Yeah, take me away,
People don't know
Calgon.
about that. People don't know
Calgon,
about
take
that,
me
Calgon.
away. Yes,
Commercials.
girl.
When you want to take a real bath, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So some of my experiences started out in this house in Riverside, California. And so what I can remember is sometimes like the kitchen doors would open and close, dishes would rattle, things would go missing. The more I think about it, and I'll explain my memory a little bit later, but things would go missing, and I don't know if people would remember this, but back in the 80s, they developed this keychain. So if you were missing something, you would whistle, and it would go beep, 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 and it'll let you know where your car keys were.
Yeah.
So I remember my parents getting a couple of those, because their keys were not always where they were supposed to be. So in that house, besides that, which I shared a room with my brother, Missy bro, and my sister had a room at the end of the hallway. So she was near the living room, the den, and across from her door, almost catty corner to her door, was the kitchen. There was another door to the kitchen. So she would hear the things at night, but she would start seeing things at night on her door. She claimed on her door, like she claimed she saw a face materialize on the door that kind of looked like the devil's face.
Oh my God.
So pure evil, kind of like demonic, like.
That's awful.
Materializing in the sense like if you were trying to visualize it, like if you took like a wood panel door, a dark wood door or something, and acid or mushrooms, and you see the lines, the grains and everything kind of transposed into like a face, like that type of thing, or just like slowly faded in out of nowhere.
Kind of like how you would see maybe in a classic horror movie where all of a sudden this face comes out of nowhere and starts getting closer and bigger to you. But
kind of like it's like translucent and slowly gains.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Makes me think
I'm
of
just trying to-
Stranger Things and stuff in the walls.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
trying
a
to
little
go
bit.
along mentally with it just to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, hearing her scream a few times. It would wake me up, my brother up, and then my parents would go down there, and she'd be crying, upset. And there's a few times that she would have to sleep in the bedroom with my parents. And it got so bad that one time, especially, she was screaming and yelling and frantic and upset. My parents went down there, and later on, I found out that what she felt was a hand grab her ankle and then like pull her off the bed. And not only was it a hand, but it was a hand with long nails on it. So she felt the nails grab onto her ankle and whip her off the bed. So to this day, she can't sleep without her feet off the edge of the bed because of that incident.
I would be that way too.
Opposite.
I'm that way now.
I'm the opposite from whatever reason. I can and I love to. But that's, anyway, it's weird. It's a long story. It's a long army story.
Okay.
Army injury story.
Scorpions?
No.
Okay.
Chets and sharks?
Scorpions would be like taking your boots and then getting your socks and covering up the hole so that nothing would go in. But that's another story.
That's smart and terrifying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I also used to have bad nightmares that lasted for years. And I don't know if it's because I watched the movie, but I kept having this dream of a green witch that would fly around outside my bedroom window, just flying around, cackling and laughing. And I'd peek out the window and she'd be flying around on her broom. And it reminds me of the Green Witch, the Wicked Witch of the West in the Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
Which back then, I saw the movies. I remember all that Wizard of Oz movies and Oz, and those movies never scared me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just weird to have those kind of dreams, and it would end up every single time with tapping on the windows, and I was too afraid to go look. And then there was finally a tap on one of the windows in my bedroom, and I'd go to look, and I had the pull down blinds, and before I can even touch them, they'd shoot up, and the witch would be there directly face to face. She didn't look nothing like the witch in the movies, so it's a completely different type of witch.
Mm-hmm.
But I had
That
that
doesn't make it any less terrifying.
Yeah.
I remember. I mean, I just had it for years, and I can still remember it like right now, just talking about it. I do have an eidetic and photographic memory.
What's eidetic?
So eidetic is more like, so I can smell and be reminded of something. I can see something, be reminded of something. I can look at a page in a book and remember that page. So I don't know the actual dictionary term for it.
Okay, that makes sense though.
But
so more so to do with your different senses and how you remember stuff.
Yeah, sometimes yes. Which I don't think it's a weird thing to say, but when you go to your family's houses, sometimes there's a smell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
right?
Different houses smell different. Yeah.
Because they have certain cologne or perfume, or the way they cook food, or their snacks that they eat. There is a certain smell that brings back, you to that place. Every now and then, I will get like a smell, and immediately like that, I'm automatically thinking of someone, and the place, and a memory. Just conversations, all in a matter of seconds. So it's a little weird. But I remember everything since I was 2 years old to now. So
Crazy.
I can draw out every single house we've been in, where every single room was, where beds were, dressers, TVs, bathrooms, the backyard, trees. Like everything is just embedded in my head. So it's a little weird.
I don't think that's weird. It's different.
So I kind of skipped ahead because when we lived in Riverside and all those incidents, the house that I remember first before that was in Fullerton, California. So in Fullerton, we didn't have any type of paranormal experiences and whatnot, but it was where I did get sick, and I ended up getting Raya syndrome. I had the flu or some type of extreme flu, and I wasn't getting better. And I believe my mom gave me half of an aspirin. There was no baby aspirin back then. And then from that, I ended up getting Rice syndrome, and ended up going to the hospital, almost dying. It's where I had my first out of body experience. I could see myself above the bed, looking down, looking at the nurses and doctors coming in the room. Every day, every morning, I used to run down the long hallway and jump on my parents' bed and wake them up. And my mom would be like, "Oh no, the monstro's here to get me, the monster."
That's so cute. I love that.
And I'd be like, ah. And I would jump on my mom and try to wake up my dad. And I would do that almost every single morning. And so when I was sick and I was in the hospital, I was there for like a month. And every day was blood being drawn for me. I had these tubes hooked up to me. They kept giving my parents percentages of me living or dying. So it was like 50%, 40, 20, 10%. It got to the point where they told my mom and dad to start making plans in case I don't make it. So one morning, my parents were in bed and they heard the doors to their bedroom open up, and my mom sat up thinking it was my older brother and sister, and nobody was there. The door was still closed. My mom was confused, and my dad sat up and he was like, "What?" She goes, "Did you not hear the door?" He's like, "Yeah, who's in here?" And they looked around the bed. Nobody was there. And my mom turned to my dad. She's like, "Oh my God, Mike." She had thought I died. So they hurried up and they got my brother and sister dressed and got in the car. They drove to the hospital and they turned around the corner to where leads up to my bedroom. And I was sitting up and I was wide awake and I was going to be okay. So she thought it was my spirit that was coming in her room to kind of like say goodbye.
The way you do the monstro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's his spirit letting them know that he was okay.
Yeah. So I survived that. Which, it wasn't until recently that I started doing more research on that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But so that was that house in Fullerton, the haunted house kind of in Riverside. And then moving on, I just had experiences throughout the years. And so as I got older, of course, my family would get together and we'd all talk here and there, and there would be all these stories about the paranormal in our family, even more so recently. But even back then, there'd be so many stories about my grandma sitting in her chair and then feeling like a hand on her shoulder, and she thought it was my grandpa. And so she went to go touch it, and it was nothing there, but it was cold. And she looked back, and there was nobody there, and my grandpa wasn't even home. So stuff like that runs deeply in our family. It wasn't until it wasn't until I joined the Army that I had my first full body apparition. And it was kind of crazy. Every time I think about it, it just blows my mind. But it was on a military base, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and I had served some time in Saudi Arabia or right after the Khobar Towers bombing in '96. So I made a couple friends along the way. And a friend of mine in my unit, he ended up getting family housing. And so he finally got his wife and kids, brought them over. I had my wife and kids too in an apartment off post. But anyways, one day after work, he invited me over to housing for something, maybe dinner, maybe just a quick chat, something. I went over there. We came inside. We sat down at the kitchen table, and you can hear the kids laughing, just having a good time. You know, kids being kids.
Mhm.
They had two kids, one a little boy. I believe he was 5 at the time. You in your chair. And then,
Oh, did it noise?
yes.
Sorry.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to send you some WD-40.
Give me that double D for it, boy.
You totally will too.
I will. But the daughter was about 8. Yeah, I want to say that's what they were, 5 and 8. So anyways, they're playing. They're having a good time. I'm sitting at the kitchen table with my friend and his wife. To my left is the hallway down to the bedrooms. So I can see it clear as day. Like, even if I'm sitting here looking at the camera, looking at you two, and I'm talking, I can still see on my wall and I can still see things here. It's
Right.
the same way, you know?
Yeah.
We were just sitting there, we're joking, we're laughing, talking about whatever. I hear the kids, they're running in and out of the rooms. And then at one moment, they started coming out the room, and I turned my head and I looked, and I see the daughter, I see the son, and then I see a girl with them. And I made a comment to them like, "Oh, that's awesome that your kids made friends already. You know, have kids over, play. That's awesome, you know." Because in the military, it's a little hard. It's a little different.
Yeah, that would be hard.
It is, especially if you try and get too close, and then people are leaving,
You have
deploying,
to
and
move
whatnot,
a lot and stuff. Yeah.
and it sucks. I have pictures to prove that of my daughters being upset, so saying goodbye to their
Mhm.
friends or their classmates at school. Um, and so when I told them, "Oh, you know, that's great that they already have friends and they can come over and play anytime," they kind of looked at each other and looked at me like, "Oh, they don't have any friends yet." And I was like, "Well, what about the little girl that's with them?" And they're like, "What little girl? There's no little girl here." And they said, Maybe you saw our daughter?" I'm like, "No, I saw your daughter. She was the first one out the door, and then your son, and then there was a girl."
Mhm.
And they go, "Well, what did she look like?" I go, "Well, she had this white dress on. She had like a red belt, and then she had this red bow that had streams coming out of the bow that was like in her hair. Like you can see the ribbon
The red
coming out of
ribbon,
her
yeah.
hair. It was like a little thin one." They're like, "No, there's nobody here." And so I just sat there looking at them, and they were looking at me. And so the wife got up first, and she walked down the hallway, and he started to get up. So I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna get up too." You know, we all just walk down the hallway, and she walks into their bedroom, and they're just sitting there on the floor playing with all these toys and stuff. And the wife, his wife was like, "Are you guys having fun? Everything okay?" They're like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, you guys are having fun. That's awesome. Um, do you have a friend over?" And they were quiet. They kind of like looked at each other and like looked down, just playing with the toys. And she was like, "Excuse me, I'm talking to you. Do you have a friend over?" And so the little boy was like, yeah, she's cool, Mom. And the mom was like, she is? So it's a she? It's a little girl? She's like, oh, yeah, Mom, she's pretty cool. She plays with us and she's fun and blah, blah, blah. And the mom's like, well, what does she look like? She goes, oh, Mom, she has this beautiful white dress like a Disney princess. And she has this red belt and she has this red bow and red ribbons in her hair. And the mom like turned around and she looked at me. And I looked at them and I was like, deuces. And
What
Later.
now?
I walked out and I got in the car and it's like I wasn't scared, but it's like a culmination of knowing all the experiences so far I've had in my life up to that point. It was the first time that I was, I guess, so open that I saw this full body apparition that looks just like me and you. It wasn't see through, it wasn't half, it was a full bodied apparition of a girl.
That's how my grandpa was. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, I sat in their driveway for like 10 minutes, car running 10 minutes, just sitting there, just like contemplating what I just saw, what just happened. And also, I guess the validation at the same time that the
Mhm.
kids validated what I saw. And so I left. It was like maybe the next day, the husband said that they were freaked out. And ever since that moment, they would hear things running in the hallway now. And
Oh
then
man.
if the wife was like yelling at the kids to clean their room or do something like their homework or something like that, stuff in the kitchen would rattle or slam. So
Jeepers.
they got an exception to leave post and move off and get an apartment off post.
How?
And so
Like, what do
they,
you say?
Yeah. How do you? What? Did they make up a reason or something?
well, back then, if you did get housing off post, then it's allowed and you're allowed to then move off post. It's when you're trying to move on post that's the most difficult. Because when you're trying to
Mm,
move on post,
Okay.
you're on a long wait list.
I was thinking like
okay.
transferred, not
Oh no,
not
no,
moved. Okay.
no.
That's why I was like, holy crap, I've never heard of that happening.
Yeah, they went from on post housing to an
Okay.
apartment in the city north of the post. So they moved out. They couldn't take it anymore. And that housing was old. Like every military base has like this. I don't want to say original housing, but if like say the housing started being built for families in the 1960s, that's most likely still there. And of
Right.
course, you got these new housing, you got these duplexes now. Like for
So it's like
instance,
a time
here,
machine. You can watch over
yeah,
the decades as more
yes,
and more.
yes, and you know, some housing is great and some housing is garbage. Um, but they had to leave; they couldn't stay there anymore. Another kind of paranormal experience I had was, and who knows if it aided in it, but it was a house that I lived in with my then wife. And in this house, um, there was one moment where I walked in the door. And as I walked in, the kitchen's to my left, living room's directly in front of me to my right. And I noticed something to my left. And as I turned and looked, it was like a black mist that was just kind of hovering there and then it shot up into the roof. And when it shot up into the roof, it's almost like dissipating black smoke went with it. Something out of a freaking movie. It was like the weirdest thing I've
Kind
ever
of like
saw.
the demons on Supernatural.
Yeah, kind of like that, actually. Yeah, it's a
Smoking
good
out.
example.
By the way, almost done with season 7 for anyone that was wanting to check in from the beginning.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah,
Continue.
he's
Sorry.
making progress. Yeah.
Good job. Uh, so at one point, in that same house, my then wife came home from work, and so she came in. We talked briefly. I was in the living room watching TV, and she went into the kitchen, put her keys down, and I hear her walking, like going towards the bedroom. And she gets to the point where she's in this other opening looking into the kitchen, and she freezes, and she's just standing there looking into the bedroom. And I looked at her. She wasn't moving. I go, "What? What's wrong?" She goes, "I just saw something. I I don't know what the
She
hell
saw
that
it too?
is." Yeah, I go, "What did you see?" And she goes, "I saw this black mist in our room, and it was just hovering there, and then it went into the bathroom." I was like, "What?" And I got up and I went into the bedroom, and I didn't see nothing in there, and I turned and I went into the bathroom. Nothing in the bathroom, but it was pretty cold. And this was like during the summertime in Oklahoma, so there's no reason why it should be as cold as it was.
Right. Yeah.
And it was
Ever.
just crazy, and it validated what she had saw. And later on, unfortunately, her and I separated and got divorced. But after we separated, I moved out and she was moving out. The neighbors came up to me and we were just talking like, yeah, unfortunately, we're getting separated, getting divorced, and so on. And he was like, "You know what?" He goes, "You guys are the 5th couple to live in that house, married, and then move out getting divorced."
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, every single
No
couple
joke.
have moved in there, been married, and then as they're moving out, they're getting divorced. Everyone's
So
going their separate
crazy.
ways."
So crazy.
And he goes, "I wonder if there's something in that house." And this guy, he's seen it all. He's a, a contractor, but a part-time firefighter. And so he's seen some things. So
Right.
I know he believes in like the spiritual world and all that whatnot. So for him to say that, I was like, wow, that's pretty deep. And
That's
maybe there was
nuts
something
too.
there.
Like, how old was he?
He was probably in his 40s at the time.
Okay, so 5 couples to move in and out in that amount of time.
You look at
It's like
12 or
they weren't
18
there
month
very long, any
deployments
of them.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's about average, isn't it? 12 to 18
What's that? For deployments?
for when you like moving in and out and around.
Like, what do you mean? I don't.
Like, so however long you guys were in a certain area.
Oh, well, you can be stationed at a military post or outside and live there on average a minimum of 2 years before you can
Okay.
go anywhere else. If you're overseas, then you have to be there for a minimum of 3 years before you go anywhere else.
So
There was,
with him having those 5 couples, we're looking at 10-year maybe. He's
Yeah.
40, so he could have,
and we moved there
the
summer.
frequency just
Yeah, that's not
insane.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we moved there summer 2006, and then we separated summer 2008. So,
right at the 2-year mark.
yeah, we're at the 2-year mark. So,
Man, it's like I want to figure that out now. Like, what was it 2 years for every other couple too?
it's a good question. And one of my cats, she passed away in that house, and she was my baby. I got her as like I think 6 or 7 weeks. Called her Aspen because her coat was white as white can be.
Oh yeah, that one. I've seen
But
pictures of her.
after we got her fixed and everything, her coat kind of turned like orange stripes into it. And then we started calling her Sybil because she started having multiple personality disorder.
Oh no.
Because she'd meow and come up to you like meow and rub up on your leg, and you go and pet her, and then she would like she'd start hissing at you. I'm like, what? You want me to freaking pet you? And she just would lose it every now and then. But we still loved her, and she ended up passing away in that house. And I remember I had to call work, let them know that she had passed, and if I could skip out on morning PT. They're like, yeah, go ahead. And so I got her in this little bag, and I went and dug a hole on the side of the house. And I was about to carry her out, and we had this other cat we called Little Boy, but he wasn't little. And I'm like, you want to say your goodbyes? You want to say goodbyes? And he was just sniffing her and licked her nose. And I carried her out there and put her in there and buried her.
That just broke my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It broke my heart that morning. Like my NCO that I had to call to get out of PT, he was like, you want a what? So I don't think he's ever had a pet in his life.
Yeah, I was gonna say people who don't have pets don't get it.
Yeah, they don't get it.
If I call my job because something happened to one of my pets, you just better give me a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. And it, and it was hard. It was hard to even then move out of that house and kind of no longer be around her.
Right. You
But
feel like you're leaving them.
yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
So there was another time with my then wife. We were visiting my parents in Tucson, Arizona. And my mom lived in this house that it just felt a little weird. But I think it made it weird because they were so open with things that were going on in this house.
Oh, your parents were?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So they were talking about how there was kitchen drawers opening and closing. The spoons and forks and all that would rattle in the drawers. They'd come in the morning into the kitchen and the cupboards are open. Stuff like that was going on in that house. And this house was not that old. Like if I had pictures of it, which I have a couple, it's not an old house. It was near an Indian reservation, but not on the reservation.
How old was your sister when you guys were living there?
Are you thinking adolescent girl poltergeist?
Adolescent girl, something or other.
Well, so
it just is not like saying that's what happened.
No, but I'm always curious to know too.
Yeah.
So when the incident with my sister happened in Riverside, California, she was 8 or 9. So
yeah, I remember she was young, little when that happened.
So at this point, at my mom and dad's house in Tucson, she was in her 30s.
Okay.
So my brother, his wife, and their 2 kids at the time lived in the house. And then my sister, her husband, and their 3 kids lived in the house. It was a pretty big house. So we were visiting, every now and then you get leave to go on vacation when you're in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would save up all my leave so I'd have like 30 days, just to go get out of there.
Yeah.
And we were sleeping on inflatable mattresses, me and my then wife on one mattress, my daughters on another mattress in front of us in the living room. And so my sister got up to get the kids and take them to school. And I can hear them, I woke up because they're literally walking by the mattress to go out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just closed the door. My sister locked it. And they're heading out. not more than a minute later, I hear a little girl. And she's literally probably about this far away from my face to the left. Once again, to the left of me. I always keep seeing things to the left. But she's counting. And she's going, 2, 3. Like she couldn't even say 3.
Oh my gosh.
It sounded like a 3 or 4-year-old. And I literally opened my eyes. I sat up and I'm just sitting there like, did I just hear that?
Yeah.
My wife heard it. She sat up and she's like looking too. And I looked at her and go, Did you hear something too? She goes, yeah. She goes, I heard a little girl. I go, yeah, me too. I go, what did you hear? And she starts doing the same thing. 2, 3. We said it at the same time. And I'm like, there's nobody here. And she was like, it has to be the kids, right? I go, what kids? I go, Michelle just left with her kids. So my brother, maybe it's theirs. So I got up, went down the hallway. My brother's room was closed. I knocked on it. Nobody said anything. So then I went down to the other room, and it was the kids' room. It was kind of closed. And so I kind of like opened up just to peek. Kids are knocked out. There's no other kids.
And also, what kid in your family is going to come up to you while you're asleep and count to 3 and then disappear? And not like say, hey, Uncle Mike or something. Get up.
Yeah.
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 And it was just crazy. So one of my daughters did hear it, and I remember we couldn't like deflate the mattresses fast enough and roll them up and start kind of getting them packed up. And I believe the wife was in the kitchen.
We are out of here.
Putting on some coffee, and then my mom woke up and we told her what happened, and she was like, "What? Really?" They had believed too that whatever was going on inside the house was a little girl, and
Really?
and that every now and then, if she's sitting in her room looking at her TV, and the hallway was right off to her right, she would see shadow going down the hallway and going into the kitchen. And
And you said your mom saw like whatever shadow kind of thing out of the eye, like go into the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's where most of the activity was, right? With the rattling and the drawers being open and stuff.
So it's just something about that area. But she said that she never felt anything come into her room. And it was just weird. I remember I had to stay the night there by myself without, not by myself. I mean, my mom and dad were there. My brother and his kids, they all moved out. My sister moved out. So it was just my mom and dad, I believe, at the time. And so I had to stay the night, and I'm sleeping on the couch, and I really just didn't sleep. I couldn't. It's like I tried to even sleep with like one eye closed, one eye open. And I'm staring at the TV, looking at reflections to see if I see anything moving. And I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do it.
Just kept thinking about that voice you heard that one time. Yeah.
It's weird how that sneaks up and will haunt you, isn't it? Like
it is. Yeah.
We go through this stuff all the time. Like we eat, breathe, whatever. And some nights it'll go on and you're just like tonight. But the night you said, I just saw something behind you. Do you want to know?
Yeah.
And I was just like, not now, please, not. Like, it's weird how there's those occasional moments where we're just like, fuck this.
Yeah.
But 90% of the time we're just like, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. Just another day.
So just hearing that you were like in that place makes me just like, I know how you feel. So it's like I'm understanding. When you tell that story, I like to immerse myself as much as I can in it to kind of get the,
Yeah.
And knowing you were there takes this to
another level.
Yeah.
And then eventually they moved out too. My parents got another house that they moved into, and that one was fine. Nothing was really going on there. But so, fast forward a few years later, divorced, and I ended up getting diagnosed with brain cancer. And it kind of absolutely sucked. It's still a little hard to talk about. In those moments of like getting treatment and so forth, I would have like the most craziest dreams I've ever had in my entire life. Just off the wall, something, I don't know, like if you put like sci-fi Van Gogh drawings and then like pure dark evil like stuff mixed into one, that was like my dreams. It was just
That's
so weird.
horrible. That's
So weird. And it wasn't until many years later, trying to figure out, okay, how did I end up with cancer? Because it didn't run in my family, didn't run in my, at least not then, didn't run in my mom's family. And I started looking more into, okay, well, I had Reyes syndrome when I was 3. Could that have taken, been part of it? That along with, I was exposed to mold in family housing for years, black mold. And me, my then wife, and kids were exposed to it. We always got sick. I was rushed to the hospital 3 times because I couldn't get off the bed without being dizzy and then throwing up on the side of the bed or throwing up trying to get to the bathroom.
so bad.
And so once you're exposed to mold, once it's in your system, that's it for life. You have it for life. So to this day, and it sucks because I live in Washington State and it's kind of damp and wet. Anytime I smell mold, I'm around it, I lose my voice. I get pain in my chest. And if I don't leave the area within a matter of minutes, which I've come to find out going to the ER, is I automatically get lung infections. So I started doing more research as far as the cancer and Reyes syndrome when I was 3, and then come to find out after reading this book from Mark Largent. Very interesting book because at the time, starting in the late 60s, there was a lot of cases starting to go on as it correlated between children and aspirin. And the makers of aspirin were like, we have nothing to do with that. It's not our drug, not us. They even went to Congress. They were compelled to go to Congress and testify. And Congress took their side and said, well, there's no indication that aspirin causes all this. And then years later, they're like, oh, yeah, we made a mistake.
Oh, yeah, it does.
And that's why there's been, since like the mid 80s, the warning label in the back of like aspirin bottles that talk about Reyes syndrome. But what threw me is when I found this guy and I found this book and I found this Facebook group that he's part of, every single person in that group of, I think there was 4,000 something people as of right now, every single one of them have had cancer.
Every single one?
Every single one. Whether it's liver cancer,
Jesus,
brain cancer, some have had some bone cancer, And some of the people are relatives of those that had Reye syndrome that are in the group.
Right.
And they're telling about their loved one that passed because of cancer. And one of the
Horrible.
biggest ones is brain cancer and the swelling of the brain. A lot of them, had issues with the brain. And it just makes me think, did it correlate with that? It's just
Like the
weird to think.
correlation between all of it, and that they all went through like the same kind of struggle. And
Yes.
is it that type of
Yes.
like sort of a collective consciousness that's extremely specific?
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of them share their near-death experiences, and a lot of them are just like mine. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not alone, but here we are years later, and my parents were told after I got better that he can never take aspirin ever again. Because as an adult taking aspirin, you're more likely to die than what you were at that point with Reye syndrome at an early age. So anything that has to do with aspirin, I can't take. So it sucks because with injuries that I've received in the Army and whatnot, the only thing I can take is Motrin or Tylenol. And it doesn't do much.
Right.
Masks the pain, but the reason why I bring it up is I believe that I was closer to death at that point in my life, just like I was when I was 3 years old. And I just think that once you get to that point in your life where you're at those points, you become more aware of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that ever since that, going through cancer and treatment and whatnot, I have been more aware of, or more
Just like tuned in.
Yeah, more tuned in, more sensitive to things that are just unexplained.
Right.
Whether it's hearing voices, seeing shadows, and whatnot.
Your frequency just changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like a whole different level. And I think that's why I'm so intrigued with the paranormal and unexplained. When I was working here on the original hospital for this military post, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington, I would hear things at night if I was working long hours. And then I would hear stories from people who had been working there for years saying, oh, yeah, this place is haunted. Like, what? They're like, yeah, the light switches go on. You hear people walking up and down the hallways. There's nobody here. And I'm like, wow, I automatically believe it. And from the point I started working there to the point I left, there was things going on there and then here at my house. I have my desk chair here.
That's right.
I have my desk next to my bed, which is on my right. I tuck in my chair into the desk every night before I go to sleep. And one morning I woke up and I went to roll out of bed to go to the bathroom, and my chair is against the bed. I would hear voices like, hey, Mike. And it's like, what? But the moment I left that place and stopped working there and moved into another building, that all stopped for a while. So now it's like every now and then I hear my name called. I hear walking around. I was just telling Keith early this morning that I'm just here waking up, getting ready for the day.
Oh, yeah.
Just checking, my messages, checking my social media. And I hear this loud pop. And
He and I are both like, we both have that fear of electrical fire, like paranoia.
Yes.
Did I unplug the toaster? Did I, whatever.
Oh,
So I immediately went, have you gone up there and checked? It should have happened by now if it was going to happen. He's like, yep, I couldn't smell it. I couldn't. It was the longest he and I talked all day,
Yeah.
like in a window,
Mm-hmm.
And
just being
I
like, "Is
stayed up here.
everything okay? Is it off?"
Yeah, I stayed up here for like another 15 minutes.
Did
Just
you
sitting
really
in my
after that?
bed, just listening, and then looking at all the sockets, looking, making sure that there's no smoke coming out, no electrical fire. Um,
Used the snooter.
yeah, I was sniffing like a dog, sniffing for smoke. So, just briefly, besides the paranormal and unexplained, um, that are almost on a daily occurrence in my life, there's one thing I forgot to tell you all about on the episode of UFOs. And that was my one and only experience with a UFO. Um, uh, I was young, probably, I don't know, seventh grade. We lived in this practically brand new house, 2 years old, from the time it was built. Beautiful 2-story house. And so I initially shared a room with my brother, but he had already um, graduated or something. Maybe he just started spending more time in San Diego. Can't remember. I think he had decided to move to San Diego to help out my aunt with her new baby, my cousin Desiree, when she was born. And so my room was just me. And one night, I just remember I was getting ready for bed and I was getting the lights off. And I go to my window, and I had a window sill. So it's like if I had cushions, I can put cushions next to the window,
Oh,
and
so it was significant.
yeah, it was
Like, yeah.
significantly outward. I
Yeah,
can
that's
sit
like
up
what I
there.
got behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like my own little nightstand because I just put my lamp and stuff on top of that.
Yeah.
But I would stand on it to get to my window and close it and whatnot. Um, so I was at the window, I was getting ready to close it, and I looked off to the left, and I saw this bright white light. And at first I thought, okay, maybe it's just a star just shining brightly, clear as night outside. And then it started moving and just like moving and then kind of like zigging and then coming back down. And then it just hovered there. And I'm just watching it for like a good 2-3 minutes. And then all of a sudden there was these balls of light that came down from it and just shot downward. It was the weirdest thing that I've ever seen. They just shot downward.
Like, was it
And
fast or was it more of like a float, like with purpose type? Not slow, but
it was kind of, it wasn't slow. It was like a medium to fast kind of
so it
type
was,
of.
but it was slow enough where you could tell they were like
Yeah.
circling.
Yeah. And there was like
Okay.
these different other balls just coming down and fizzing out. Like you won't see the light as they get down to a certain point.
Like a reverse firework thing.
Yeah.
Like how those things do the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it stopped and that big ball of light shot up real quick and then disappeared. And I was like, what the hell is that?
So it left something.
I think so. And it dumbfounded me. And that was probably, I don't know, 1987, 88 time frame. So fast forward a few months ago, and I had texted you guys like, holy crap. I was watching an episode about UFOs or paranormal caught on camera stuff that they have on Travel Channel.
Oh, the one that was exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this guy
Oh shit! I forgot about that.
out of Fontana, California. It was in between Riverside and Moreno Valley. It was like a little town that was just up and coming, brand new housing and so forth. So the nearest military base was in Moreno Valley, and that was probably 20 miles away. So where this light was, there was housing, there was houses, there was no Air Force base, no airport, no nothing there.
It wasn't like a pond or a lake or an open field.
Not
It was
even
straight
that.
up suburban.
Yes, yeah, exactly, suburban. And this guy came on from Fontana, California, and he saw this bright light, and so he whipped out his camera phone and he's recording it. And the same exact thing. The light was just moving around, and then it kind of got still, and then these little balls of light just shot down out of it. And I was like, holy crap, that's exactly what I saw as a kid.
That's
And
nuts.
Fontana, from where I lived, is probably like a 30-minute drive without traffic. So he wasn't even that far from where I lived. And it brought back so many memories of that event. Like it's my one and only time I've ever saw a UFO and something crazy shooting out of it. So
Yeah.
I remember I told my parents, and they just looked at me like I was crazy. And then we brushed it off. And yeah, but I just had to go back to that because I completely didn't talk about that in the UFO episode that we did.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. That's
man.
nuts.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known what to think either. And then especially like however many years you see footage of someone else seeing the exact same thing.
Yeah,
That would trip me out.
It was weird. It's like I said, I have a photographic and eidetic memory. So what I'm watching on TV is exactly what I saw that night to a T, everything. And it just blew my mind. And I had to record it. But yeah, that's my long, strange, weird, paranormal and unexplained story.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
It still continues. So there's bound to be more stories ahead.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us again. Want to thank Mike for sharing his stories with us, as always. And then Miss Lindsay over here. Right there, I believe, if I'm pointing correctly, as we had mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Thank you for the commentary and the fun. And we look forward to seeing you guys again soon.